Hey gang, today we're talking about escaping what I call the quantitative trap or the quantitative plateau. And what this is a excessive focus and attention spent towards the quantitative aspects in fitness and weight loss and so forth, because we can quantify things with numbers. We can quantify your weight, we can quantify reps, how much weight you're lifting, body fat percentage, we can quantify portion sizes of food. There's lots of things we can attach a number to. Now, this is good and it should be done. Anytime you're seeking a goal, you should be tracking and looking at quantifiable aspects of that goal. I'm not saying don't do that. But if you really want to get to a higher level, you're going to have to look beyond the numbers, beyond the things that you can measure. Because if you're only focusing on, it's all about weight and reps, or it's all about portion, it's all about reading food labels and stuff, you're flying half blind. Because a big chunk of what's most important when it comes to the process of weight loss, the process of building muscle, are things you're not going to be able to quantify. And you need to recognize these and be able to manipulate them at will. Otherwise, you're never going to get to where you want to be. Now, I got a great quote here from Tom Platz, a classic bodybuilder, calves or quads the size of my torso. But this is really going to hit home for you. Quote is, "After being taught sets and reps and working at it for a length of time, you can't paint by numbers anymore. It must come from within. Any artist has an emotional contact with their work. A true bodybuilder doesn't just build muscle. He creates muscle. You can't be a robot." There's so many great things in this quote, particularly this idea of there's an emotional component. Like, how have we ever talked about how exercise just feels to you? On an emotional level, how does it feel physically? Do we pay attention to this? Do we try to make it feel better? A big part of healthier eating is feeling better with food. How do you feel after a meal? This is stuff that is very hard to put a number to, but it is absolutely critical to your success, because who cares what the numbers mean? If the numbers are going great, but if how things feel and your experience is going down, you're still regressing. I don't care if the reps are going up. I don't care if you're lifting more weight. If your joints are hurting, if you're feeling exhausted and beat up all the time, you're going backwards. But if you're getting down if you're grabbing onto that pull-up bar and it feels stronger, and you're taking note of how the tension is flowing through your body, like, oh yeah, I've got it more in my lats. That's good. I got more even tension along my chain. It does. So what if your numbers don't change? If you're still doing just 10 pull-ups, but the 10 pull-ups feel better, they're 10 better pull-ups, and they're gonna produce better results, even if the numbers don't go up. We get into this quantitative plateau and trap when we get too focused on these numbers, and we think, well, if that's not changing, then I'm not progressing. Or if that's the only indicator, that's the only thing that matters. Who cares about the other stuff? The fact of the matter is, the stuff you can't quantify may, in the longer run, be far more important to your success. And if you're not paying attention to it, you're gonna be SOL. So it's not rocket science. There is an art to this. As Tom Platz says, it's a creative process. It's an artistic process. As I mentioned in my book, when you go, if you're gonna get the results you're gonna get, you can't paint by numbers for it. I like to say you can't copy success. Every single success of anything in the history of the world is done in an original way to some extent. You can't build the next Facebook. You can't take someone else's program, do exactly the same thing, and get the same result. Even if you take the same program you had like 20 years ago, you're different now than you were then. You have different influences, you've got different preferences, different resources, so things are always gonna be different. In that regard, in order to get the results that you wanna have, it's a creative process. It's something that has an artistic quality to it. So think like a chef when they're making a 5-star meal. They're not taking the measuring spoons and measuring things out exactly as there's an artistic component to it. And a lot of people will criticize this and say, well, if you're not quantifying it, how do you know if you're making any progress? Well, this is where you gotta kind of sense these things. If you put more hot sauce in a dish, how do you know it's more spicy without actually saying, well, there's 5 more tablespoons of hot sauce on it? You can sense it. This is one of the great things about tension in the human body. We can sense it going through us. Pay attention to it, manipulate it at will. Who cares if numbers don't change as a reflection of it right away? If it feels different, if you can manipulate how something feels, then you're going to be on the right track. So pay attention in the next week to how things feel physically, emotionally, mentally. Pay attention to that and play around and experiment with how you can modify that feeling. Because if you do that, the numbers are just going to follow right along and progress on their own in time. Questions down below. Be fit, live free.